Section 2 of the Fables of Pilpay. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Fables of Pilpay by Anonymous, translated by Abdullah bin al-Muqaffa and Joseph Harris. Section 2. Introduction. Towards the eastern confines of China there once reigned a monarch, whose renown, as well for arms as wisdom and virtue, spread far and near through all countries of the East, and made him the admiration of all that part of the world. The greatest princes of the East were subject to his dominion, and admirers of his virtues. He was attended like Kochannon, and lodged like Powashti, potent as Alexander, and armed like Darius. His council was composed of persons of integrity and learning. His riches were immense, his arms numerous, and himself both valiant and just. Rebels felt his anger, and his soldiers imitated his valor. His justice humbled the pride of tyrants, while his goodness succored the miserable. In a word, under the empire of Humayun, for so this virtuous prince was called, the people were happy, because everywhere throughout his vast dominions the most strict search was made after the wicked, and care taken to punish them as enemies to the public tranquillity. Justice ought to be the rule of every prince's actions, who desires his kingdom and his throne should be established like the residence of the Supreme. And whatever monarch omits to administer punishments to vice and rewards to virtue, let him be assured his dominions will not be long secure from ruin. Good kings generally make good servants, and so it happened to this excellent monarch. For he had a vizier, or prime minister, who loved the people like a real father. He was merciful and compassionate, and his counsels, like tapers, gave light to the most hidden secrets. His name was Nogestere, that is to say, successful counsel, and very properly was he so called, since by his understanding he had rendered the kingdom happy. The king never undertook any enterprise without first consulting him. He did everything by his advice, for he found that without it nothing prospered. It happened that once as the monarch, attended by his vizier, had been hunting, after the pleasure and sport of their exercise were over, the king was for returning to his palace. But the heat of the sun was so violently scorching that he told the vizier he was not able to endure it. To which the vizier answered, that if it was his majesty's pleasure, he might go to the foot of a certain neighboring mountain, where he would be sure of cool shade and the refreshing breezes of the wind, and there they might pleasantly spend the heat of the day. The king followed his advice, and in a little time they got to the place, where the coolness, caused by the shade of several trees that nature seemed to have taken delight to plant by the side of a number of winding brooks and fountains, made them forget the heat which they had endured upon the open road. The king, finding the covert very delightful, sat down upon the grass, and, falling into a contemplation of the works of the great Creator of all things, admired the inimitable painting of the flowers and other productions of nature that offered themselves to his sight. As he was, with this most laudable view, looking about him, he spied at some little distance the trunk of a tree, which the rottenness of the wood declared to be decayed and very old, in which there was a swarm of bees that were making honey. Upon this, having never seen an object of this kind before, he could not avoid asking the vizier what those little creatures were. Most sovereign monarch, replied the minister, those little creatures are very beneficial, and of 1,000 uses in society, and are in the highest degree remarkable for the order of their government. They have a king among them who is bigger than the rest, and whom they all obey. He resides in a little square apartment, and has his viziers, his porters, his sergeants, and his guards. The industry of these and all these other officers, and people in general, is such that they frame every one for themselves a little six-cornered chamber of wax, the angles of which differ not at all in shape or dimensions, but are so exactly made to answer one another, that the most generous geometrician could not range them with more regularity. These little chambers finished, the vizier takes of them an oath of fidelity, that they are never to defile themselves, according to which promise they never but light upon the branches of rose bushes or odoriferous flowers, so that their food, which is aerial, and of the quintessence of flowers, is digested in a little time and changed into a substance of a sweet and pleasing taste. When they return home, the porters smell to them, and if they have no ill scent about them, they are permitted to enter. But if they have any ungrateful smell, they kill them. Or if they negligently suffer any one that has an ill scent to enter, and the king happens to smell it, he sends for the porters, and puts them and the offender to death at the same time. If any strange fly endeavors to enter this community, the porters oppose him, and if he seeks to come in by violence, he is put to death. Historians also report to us, great emperor, that Pawashti learned to build his palace, to have viziers, porters, guards, and officers from these little creatures. When the king heard the vizier thus discourse, he went near the tree, stood still to behold the little animals at work, and after he had well considered them, declared aloud his admiration to see a society of insects so well governed. His vizier, beholding him wrapped up in astonishment, addressed himself to him in this manner. Sir, said he, all this good order depends only upon the good counsel and prudent conduct of wise and able ministers, well affected to their prince, and lovers of the public peace. These are the persons that always preserve an empire in a flourishing condition. And whenever these things are mentioned, we ought to remember the strongest instance of this maxim ever known, which was in the conduct of the great Debshalem, who wholly entrusted the government of his kingdom to the good counsels of that miracle of wisdom, the Brahman Pilpay, insomuch that by the guidance of that minister he reigned in peace and the greatest prosperity and earthly happiness, while he lived, and dying, left to his posterity a name for ever to be remembered with esteem and honor. When the king heard him pronounce the names of Debshalem and Pilpay, he felt in himself the motions of a more than ordinary joy. I have, said he to the vizier, for a long time most earnestly desired to hear the story of that Brahman's government, but never yet could meet with an opportunity to satisfy myself, nor ever imagined that you knew their history. I am now more happy than I could expect, and desire you will immediately relate to me the story, that my kingdom may be established in happiness by the maxims of that venerable philosopher. On this command of the monarch, the vizier thus entered on the history. End of section 2.